Your house is not an asset. I know what you were taught. I know what your bank statement quietly implies every month. I know it feels almost disrespectful to even question it, like questioning whether the sky is blue. It's wrong. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to see the exact moment two boys, same neighborhood, same opportunities, same starting line, split into two completely different futures. One died broke, owing money he never paid off. One died a multimillionaire, having never finished the 8th grade. And the difference between them had nothing to do with luck and almost nothing to do with intelligence. This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Picture this. You're 34. You check your bank balance the way you check a wound. Quickly. Then look away. The paycheck hit 5 days ago. It's already gone. Rent, groceries, a car payment that never seems to get smaller no matter how many years you put into it. You did everything right. Good grades, a steady job. You've never missed a bill in your life, and somehow you're still one bad month away from panic. Maybe it's not even that dramatic. Maybe it's quieter than that. A small, constant hum in the back of your mind every time you open your banking app. A feeling you've gotten so used to, you don't even register it as fear anymore. You just call it adulting. You're not lazy. You're not bad with money. You were never taught the rules the wealthy actually play by. Robert Kiyosaki grew up watching two men live out that exact gap in real time, under the same roof of friendship for years. His real father, Harvard-educated, a respected government official, brilliant on paper. Poor Dad, his best friend's father, never finished 8th grade. Rich Dad, same town, same decade, same access to the same banks, the same stock market, the same opportunities. One of them died broke, owing money. The other became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. Why? Poor Dad followed every rule he was ever given. Study hard, get a secure job, climb the ladder, retire safe. He believed it so completely he never questioned it once. And he worked himself into the ground, proving it true. There's a moment Kiyosaki describes from childhood that says everything. 9 years old, asking his real father how to get rich. His father, exhausted, stressed, staring at a stack of bills on the kitchen table, barely looked up. "We can't afford that kind of thinking," he said. Not, "I don't know," not, "Let's find out." Just, the door closed. Walk next door, same week, and ask Rich Dad the same question. He didn't answer it either. He put the 9-year-old to work, sweeping floors in a grocery store for 10 cents an hour, not to teach him about money, but to teach him about the feeling of not having enough. To show him what it actually does to a person, sitting in that feeling before ever showing him the way out of it. Two men. Two completely different answers to the exact same 9-year-old question. It still wasn't enough. Not for poor Dad, anyway. He worked himself into the ground, proving his philosophy true. And the philosophy still failed him. Here's what nobody tells you about that story. It was never about how much either man earned. Poor Dad had a respectable income most of his life. It was about what each man understood. And what poor Dad never understood is about to change how you see your own paycheck. There's a detail in this story that's easy to skip past, but it matters more than it seems. Both men at different points had access to the exact same information, the same newspapers, the same library down the street. the same conversations happening in the same town. Information was never the bottleneck. Rich Dad didn't know something Poor Dad couldn't have learned. He simply asked different questions about what he was looking at. Imagine standing in your kitchen, new countertops, a mortgage with your name on it. Your parents are proud. You feel like you've arrived. That feeling is costing you money every single day you stand there. Kiyosaki draws one line, and it cuts through almost everything you've ever been told about money. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. Your mortgage, your property tax, your repairs, money leaving every month, whether you're happy in that kitchen or not. Rich Dad never chased the bigger house first. While the neighborhood upgraded their living rooms, he was quietly buying things that paid him. Rental units, small businesses, assets that worked while he slept. Picture two neighbors. Same street, same year, same income. One spends a decade renovating. New kitchen, new pool, new master bathroom. And every dollar of equity gets reabsorbed back into the house itself. Invisible, untouchable. Unless he sells the place he lives in. The other spends that same decade buying a single small rental property, then a second, then a third. Same money. One pile of it sits frozen inside drywall. The other pile is quietly handing him a check every month, whether he shows up to work or not. 10 years later, they wave to each other across the same street. They are not living the same life. He bought assets before liabilities. Most people do the opposite and call it settling down. Test it yourself right now on anything you own. Does this put money in my pocket or take it out? If the honest answer is out, fine. Just stop calling it an investment. Now, purist accountants will argue about equity and appreciation, but Rich Dad wasn't talking about accounting. He was talking about survival. But here's the trap hiding underneath this one. Knowing the rule isn't enough. Because even people who understand assets perfectly still stay stuck. Here's why. You wake up, you work, you get paid. The money disappears, you wake up again. Kiyosaki calls it the rat race. And once you see its actual shape, you can't unsee it in your own life. Work for money, paycheck, expenses. Then, the trap inside the trap. Income rises, and expenses quietly rise to match it. A nicer car, a bigger place, small upgrades that start to feel like necessities instead of choices. The treadmill speeds up exactly as fast as you do. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Working harder inside this loop does not get you out of it. It just makes the wheels spin faster underneath your feet. Think about the last raise you got. Be honest with yourself for a second. Where did it actually go? For most people, it didn't sit in a savings account quietly growing. It became a slightly nicer car payment, or a slightly bigger apartment, or a handful of small upgrades that felt earned and reasonable at the time. And within a few months, the new bigger paycheck felt exactly as tight as the old, smaller one did. Same stress, just a higher number attached to it. That's not a coincidence. That's the loop doing exactly what it's designed to do. There's a name for this in the book, almost in passing, that's easy to miss the first time you read it. Lifestyle inflation. It doesn't announce itself. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to spend more. It happens one small, reasonable decision at a time. The slightly nicer coffee on the way to work, because you can afford it now. The streaming subscriptions that quietly multiply. The "we deserve this" dinner out, twice a month instead of once. Each decision on its own is completely defensible. Stacked together over years, they form a ceiling exactly as high as your income, no matter how high that income climbs. Picture someone earning $40,000 a year, stressed, tight, counting every dollar. Picture that same person earning $120,000 a year 5 years later. Ask them honestly if they feel 3 times less stressed about money. Almost every time, the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is the opposite. More stress because now there's more to lose, a bigger lifestyle to protect, a longer fall if anything goes wrong. The number on the paycheck changed. The feeling in their chest when they check their balance did not. So what actually gets someone out? Not more hours. A different question entirely. How do I make money work for me? Instead of, how do I earn more? Small shift in language, massive shift in trajectory. 2 employees, same company, same salary, same job title, same commute even. They used to carpool together back when they started on the same day 5 years ago. One comes home, turns on the TV, and calls it earned rest. And it is earned. Nobody's arguing that. The exhaustion is real. The other comes home and spends 90 minutes building something of their own, a rental, a cité business, a small portfolio, slowly, asset by asset, with no guarantee any of it works. For the first 18 months, almost nothing visibly changes between them. Same paycheck hits both their accounts on the same day. Same grocery bill. If you looked at their bank statements side by side, you'd struggle to tell them apart. That's exactly why most people quit at month 18. The gap is invisible for so long that it feels like the effort isn't working. And that invisible stretch is precisely where most people give up and turn the TV back on for good. But Rich Dad had 4 words for what happens to the one who doesn't quit. Mind your own business, not your job. Your business. Keep the paycheck if you need it. Most people do. But every spare hour outside of it should be building your asset column, not someone else's company. 5 years from now, those 2 employees will not be living the same life, not close. And the gap won't have come from a bigger salary. It'll have come from where their evenings went. Quick question, and I want you to actually answer it, not just read past it. If your income stopped tomorrow, completely, no warning, how many months could you survive on what you currently have built outside of your job? For most people, the honest answer is somewhere between 0 and 2. Not because they're irresponsible, because nobody ever told them that number mattered until it was the only number that did. Kiyosaki isn't asking you to feel ashamed of that number. Shame doesn't build assets. It just makes people avoid checking their bank app for another 6 months, which makes the number worse, not better. He's asking you to notice it. Just notice it. Because the entire next section of this book exists for one reason: to change that number slowly, deliberately, starting with knowledge most people simply never had access to. What if being broke was never about how much you earn? School taught you to work for money. It never taught you how money actually works. Taxes, debt, the kind that makes you richer versus the kind that quietly drains you. Yes, the structures the wealthy use that most people have literally never had explained to them in plain language. It's a language, and most of us were simply never enrolled in the class. Here's a quick test. You probably know what interest rate means. Most people do, at least loosely. But could you explain, in one sentence, the actual difference between debt that builds your wealth and debt that quietly drains it? Most people can't, not because they're unintelligent, but because nobody ever sat them down and taught it. It was never on the curriculum. School taught algebra and essay structure and the dates of wars. It rarely, if ever, taught the one subject every single graduate would spend the rest of their life navigating with real consequences every single month for decades. That's not an accident, Kiyosaki argues. It's not even really anyone's fault in the small individual sense. It's simply a gap nobody filled. And gaps don't close themselves. They stay open until somebody decides to walk through them. Here's why that reframe matters more than it sounds like it should. If you think you're broke because you don't earn enough, the fix always feels distant. Wait for a raise, wait for a windfall, wait for luck. But if the real gap is knowledge, not income, the path opens today with the paycheck you already have. Think about two people who both lose their jobs in the same week. One of them spends the next 6 months sending out resumes, waiting for someone else to hand them the next paycheck. The only system they've ever known. The other spends that same 6 months learning the language they were never taught, reading about how debt actually works, how small businesses get funded, how assets get structured. Same crisis, same 6 months, completely different exits, because one of them finally stopped waiting for permission to understand money, and the other never started. And that path leads somewhere most people never expect. There was a phrase Kiyosaki heard from poor Dad almost every week of his childhood, said at the dinner table, said in the car, said so often it stopped being a sentence and started being furniture in the house. Something nobody even noticed was there anymore. I can't afford it. 4 words, said about vacations, said about investments, said eventually about almost everything that mattered. Rich Dad heard Kiyosaki repeat that same phrase once as a teenager about something small, a comic book maybe, or a baseball glove. Most adults would have let it slide. Rich Dad didn't. He stopped what he was doing, looked at him, and banned the phrase outright. Wouldn't allow it in his presence, not once, for the rest of the time Kiyosaki spent learning from him. Instead, every single time the words almost came out, Rich Dad made him ask one different question instead. How can I afford it? Sit with that for a second, not as a money tip, as 2 different people you could become. I can't afford it closes the conversation instantly. Door shut, nothing left to think about. You go back to what you were doing before, comfortable and exactly as stuck as you were a moment ago. It feels like humility. It's actually surrender, wearing humility's clothes. How can I afford it? Does the opposite. It doesn't promise yes. The honest answer right now, today, might still be no. But it keeps your brain working on the problem instead of surrendering to it. It keeps the door cracked open even when you can't yet see what's on the other side of it. One mindset keeps you safe and stuck. The other keeps you uncomfortable and growing. Here's the line that explains why this book has sold over 40 million copies decades after it was written, in a world where almost everything else from that same decade has been forgotten. The single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If it is trained well, it can create enormous wealth. Read that again slowly. It's not actually a sentence about money. It's about training, about choosing the harder question over the easier excuse again and again in moments nobody else is watching, until that choice becomes who you are without you having to think about it anymore. That's the gap between poor dad and rich dad. It was never about which school they went to. It was never even really about the assets they bought. It was about which sentence they let themselves believe. Somewhere in the last 15 minutes, a number popped into your head. A house payment, a someday. A version of yourself you put on hold 3, 5, maybe 10 years ago and quietly stopped checking in on. Maybe it was a business idea you talked yourself out of. Maybe it was a number in a savings account you promised yourself you'd hit by now. Maybe it's just the quiet, specific exhaustion of watching your paycheck disappear 5 days after it arrives every single month, like clockwork, like a law you never agreed to. I'm not going to tell you to chase it. That's not my call to make for you, and honestly, anyone promising you it's simple is selling you something. I'm going to tell you this instead. The people who change their financial life don't do it the week they feel motivated. Motivation doesn't last long enough to matter. They do it the week they get tired of asking, can I afford it? And finally, quietly asking, how can I? Instead, ikut. That shift doesn't happen on camera. It happens alone in a kitchen at 11 at night when nobody's watching and nobody would know either way. If this video moved that needle even slightly, don't subscribe because I asked. Subscribe because there's a version of you on the other side of that question. And the next video on this channel might be the thing that gets you one step closer to meeting them. See you in the next one.